Okay. GEI.
The restaurant thing that the idea that you have.
I sent an email to Marini and to Sheila, and they tried to change it up a bunch. So it's completely different vision from what I had. And I said, that's not the event that I want to run. So if you guys want to do it that way, I'll back on it. I haven't heard anything back from them. That was June or July.
What was their thought?
So my goal is to get people to come into the city for one night, have a big event, and have the restaurant really be the star. They wanted to open up to the whole city and have every business be a part of it for the whole entire month, not for like 3 key hours. So it was just different vision. Testing.
I'll bring it next month.
Testing, there we go.
Next month, you got it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ansonia Senior Center for our Kinneytown Dam Removal Project Community Conversation. This meeting, if you've been to some of our other sessions, it's going to run a little different, a little more streamlined, no breakout sessions, but we do have Q&A at the end. We do have some folks joining us online, and for a reminder for them, any questions that you have, and I should probably go over here because I think this is where the camera is. Any questions that you have online, put it in the Q&A section and we'll get to those during the Q&A portion. I also want to let you know that we do have pizza in the back and bathrooms are out that door. You can go at that door and take a left. Feel free, of course, to get up anytime if you need the bathrooms or for pizza. And we do have a hard stop tonight, so we have to wrap up around 7:30 and leave here by 8 o'clock. So keep the conversations afterwards to a minimum, that kind of thing. Make sure that we leave this space. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to pass the mic to Mayor Cassetti for a few words and welcome you here.
Good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? How many residents in the area where the Kinneytown Dam is? Do we ever raise a hand? Okay, all right. I want to thank the Naugatuck Council of Governments and Save the Sound for doing this. You know, I'm sorry I wasn't here at the last meeting. I had a previous engagement, and my counterpart in Seymour wasn't able to make it tonight because she had a previous engagement. But I want to welcome everybody. I am concerned about this dam of it coming down, because what I'm concerned about is the sediment that is going to be coming down the river. Now, I know that Derby and Shelton boast that they're the low-laying towns, but we are the low-laying town because it's coming right through our commerce area through the river, and I'm very concerned about that. So we have engineers here tonight that are going to explain everything. My main concern is how they go about dismantling the dam, which is a concern of mine. I do this for a living in my previous life, and I know that there's a lot of different things that need to be done, but I just want to make sure that the residents in the lower area of Ansonia are protected. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say, and hopefully when the plans come out, I get a chance to take a look at them and get an explanation on what's exactly happening. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and looking forward to hearing what has to be said. Thank you.
Okay. We also have First Select Woman Anne Marie Dragonis joining us virtually, so we're going to unmute her and let her have her introduction notes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am sorry that I am unable to be there. I have also had a previous engagement for tonight, but I plan on being at the next one. I think it's great the NVCOG is looking at this, and we're looking at removing the dam. As you know, this is going to be a long project, and there's going to be a lot of data for both Mayor Cassetti and I to look at as mayor. Our number one concerns are to ensure that our residents are safe and they have a great understanding of this. And we are answering any questions that are out there. Once again, thank you to the NVCOG and the Save the Sound for putting this together. I look forward to working along with you. And Mayor Cassetti and I look forward to see this project moving along, but moving along at a safe timeline to make sure our residents are aware and are safe as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Cassetti and First Select Woman Anne Marie Dragonis. I'm going to turn the mic over to our team here. They're going to speak to you quickly about the history and some updates that have happened, and then we are going to hear from the engineer GEI.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for being here again. I know the last few meetings we talked, we went really in depth into the background and the reason why we're taking down the dam. And I see a lot of familiar faces here. I know a lot of you have been here for the first two, so we're not going to make you sit through the same presentation, but we are going to give some sort of high-level background, just so that everybody that's new, and there's a lot of people online as well, just to make sure that everybody's sort of starting with at least a general familiarity of the project. So we'll do some introductions. We'll go a little bit through the background. We'll go through some project updates that we have from the last meeting. And then we're going to introduce the engineers that are now on board, that are going to be overseeing this project. So my name is Aaron Budris. I'm the Environmental Planning Director at Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments, or NVCOG. We are the one of 9 COGs in Connecticut, set up to conduct regional planning, help coordinate municipal efforts of member communities, support municipal planning, and provide services and assistance as needed. Our board, so our bosses, we report to the 19 chief elected officials of our 19 towns, and we work mainly on transportation, land use, and environmental planning issues. I'm joined tonight by some of my colleagues at NVCOG. So Craig Stevenson is a project manager. Craig's in the back there. Ricardo Rodriguez is our brownfields coordinator. Desiree Blanchard is our communications and community engagement coordinator. Christine O'Neill is our environmental planner, and Rick Dunn, our executive director, is in the back here. And I'll hand it off here to Paul.
Thank you, Aaron. My name is Paul Woodworth. I'm a project manager and the director of the ecological restoration team at Save the Sound. So I manage both staff and projects and the staff that are managing projects. Save the Sound is a regional environmental nonprofit that works on environmental policy and climate policy. We protect open space lands. We monitor water quality in Long Island Sound, and we watchdog polluters, and we implement restoration projects much like this one. I wanted to go through we wanted to sort of do an overview of the map and sort of what the spatial extent is of this project and the features that we're looking at here. At the bottom of the screen is Ansonia. Top of the screen is downtown Seymour. Kinneytown Dam is just about halfway in between. Route 8 is running down the western shore, and Metro North Waterbury line is running down the eastern shore. The Kinneytown impoundment extends from the Kinneytown Dam up or north towards downtown Seymour, ending at approximately the bridge, Broad Street Bridge. Seymour Union Cemetery is sort of where that impoundment changes from a very pond-like environment to more of a riverine environment. And then downstream of the dam is the Seymour-Ansonia municipal boundary. And just beyond that is Coe Pond, which is quite close to the Ansonia spillway. And so shifting now to sort of a close-up of Kinneytown, the Kinneytown Dam. So we've been talking about Kinneytown Dam, but Kinneytown Dam and the entire hydropower site there is actually a combination of structures. So this is the Kinneytown Dam, and that's sort of the footprint of that, 22 feet in height. Concrete structure, about 450 feet across the channel. And that's an aerial of that recent. But the other feature that was sort of been brought to light that I think has been ignored over the years as this was being maintained or operated as a hydropower facility is this other earthen dam that extends the full length from Kinneytown all the way down to the Ansonia spillway. This earthen structure contains the canal, a canal reservoir, and also Coe Pond Dam. And the canal is only about 5 or so feet of depth of water, but Coe Pond itself is like 15 to 20 feet of depth of water. So very different features there. And then running parallel to that earthen dam is the Waterbury Metro North line. Up near Kinneytown, the Metro North Dam is close to the river banks. But as you go downstream or south, that rail line drops down in elevation, and it's at the toe of the Coe Pond Dam. So it's about a 15-foot earthen dam that stands above the rail line there. So really, it's a complex of multiple structures. The Kinneytown Dam, there's a canal gatehouse at the top of that, or at the north end of the canal. The canal itself that extends. Kinneytown Dam is comprised of a powerhouse. We call that Unit 1 powerhouse, and its fish ladder. And then down on the south end is the Ansonia Dam spillway with its what's called Unit 2 powerhouse. Back to you.
All right. Thank you.
So it came to light that there were serious issues at Kinneytown Dam when Kevin Zach, who's here today, who is he's a local river advocate and he's the president of the Naugatuck River Revival Group. Kevin came to NBCOG staff and to a lot of our chief elected officials and really pointed out that, you know, he didn't think that fish were able to pass the dam. He'd spent, I don't know, a decade probably now at this point, documenting fish above and below the dam. He's taken pictures and video of dead and dying fish at the base of the dam and really a lack of any migratory fish above the dam. So he shared those concerns with us and with our chief elected officials on our board, and our board's made dealing with the Kinneytown Dam a regional priority. So we began working with Save the Sound to better understand the issue around 2018. And, you know, what we found out was that, you know, fish are supposed to be able to pass Kinneytown. As a hydroelectric facility, Kinneytown Dam is regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. In the 1990s, FERC called on the dam owner to facilitate fish passage as part of the implementation of a Connecticut DEP effort to remove barriers to fish passage all along the Naugatuck River. And a fish ladder was constructed at Kinneytown Dam in 1999. That ladder has never been effective, especially, but it's been especially ineffective since around 2013 when the Unit 2 powerhouse in Ansonia went offline, and that has never been returned to service. So that completely altered the flow of water over and around the dam. And the potential to restore fish passage through the ladder was dealt another blow in 2020 when Unit 1 powerhouse went offline, and there was no plan to restore that unit. So currently, there's no way to control flow through or around the dam, and the fish ladder is now completely non-functional. So while it was fish passage that originally drew our attention to the Kinneytown Dam, as we began looking into fish passage issues, other concerns also came to light. So the facility is no longer operational and has produced no electricity since 2020. It's in really poor condition and is really no longer commercially viable as a hydropower generator. The previous owners made very little or no investment in maintenance, and it's out of compliance with its FERC license exemption at this point. The cost of bringing the facility back online and in compliance with its FERC license exemption far outweighs the revenue that it could ever produce selling power to the grid. The owner has effectively abandoned it at this point and has told FERC that they do not have the ability to make even minor repairs to it. So the facility is really just continuing to fall further and further into disrepair. Despite providing no benefit to the community, Kinneytown Dam is continuing to cause huge negative impacts beyond just blocking fish passage. It's increasing flood risk up and downstream of the dam. It's negatively impacting water quality. It's blocking natural sediment flows in the river. It's a serious public health and safety concern, especially in Ansonia at the lower, below Coe Pond. And it blocks recreational access to the Naugatuck River in both Seymour and Ansonia. With all this, all these negatives, became clear to us and to our partners that dam removal is really the only way to permanently address all of those negative impacts. And for those reasons as well, in 2022, when Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection updated their plan to restore diadromous fishes to the Naugatuck River watershed, they strongly recommended the removal of Kinneytown Dam. So with all this in mind, we began focusing on finding a way to remove the dam. In 2022, funding became available under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. NVCOG, with our partner Save the Sound, applied to NOAA's Restoring Fish Passage Through Barrier Removal grant program. And we had strong support from the dam owner, from the governor, from both local communities, from our federal delegation, from DEEP, from the Fish and Wildlife Service, from EPA, and others. And we ultimately received an award of $15 million to begin the Kinneytown Dam Removal project. And what that project looks like, sort of the big picture is that we're working right now to acquire the project through the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank, which is a nonprofit that holds properties that have large environmental liabilities while they can be remediated. The plan is to conduct an engineering and design of the dam removal, work through FERC to decommission the dam facility. We found that there are sewer lines that run underneath the impoundment that belong to the town of Seymour that need to be relocated. So that's also part of this project at this point, to move those so that when the dam does get removed, there's not negative impacts there. Ultimately, we want to remove Kinneytown Dam and restore the Naugatuck River and develop recreational access to the river. And throughout the whole process, we are going to be engaging stakeholders and residents. That's why we're here tonight, and we're going to continue holding these meetings every other month, just to keep you all involved and give you a voice in this project as well. So our timeline at this point, we're working to acquire the project. As I said, that acquisition right now is set to take place by the end of this month. The design and engineering is beginning as we speak. We're continuing to work with the Environmental Protection Agency to assess the sediments behind the dam, and basically the entire project as well. This year in 2025, we will be working on a sediment management plan with EPA. Like I said, we're going to be continuing to have these meetings regularly, and the sewer siphon design, that the relocation of the sewer engineering will be completed this year as well. Next year, in 2026, we'll continue the design and engineering. We'll be focusing on permitting and FERC decommissioning, and the sewer siphon construction project should be ready to go to construction next year. 2027, we're hoping to begin the dam deconstruction, and in 2028 conclude it, and hopefully turn a restored river back to the communities. The funding we've received, I mentioned the $15 million. We've also received $1.6 million from the state of Connecticut through the Supplemental Environmental Program. The EPA targeted brownfield assessment that is ongoing still has exceeded $900,000. So that's sort of a match from EPA. We received $3.42 million in congressionally directed spending for the sewer relocation project, and $270,000 from DEEP, from the state of Connecticut, to design the recreational trail through the facility. And we are still waiting to hear back on an additional $1.72 million in congressionally directed spending that we requested for the dam, for the sewer relocation project. So total committed and pending, we have a little under $23 million. We understand that that's probably not going to be enough to finish this project, which is sort of a good segue into our updates that we have for you tonight. Right now, our project team is preparing an application for 2 NOAA grant program opportunities. One is the program that we received the $15 million through, which is restoring fish passage through barrier removal. We're going to be requesting $8 million from that program, and the deadline for that is February 10th. So we're sort of wrapping up that application right now. And then there's a transformational habitat restoration and coastal resilient grant opportunity due in April. And this project is eligible, so we will be applying for that as well. And we're exploring all other funding options as well right now. The acquisition, we've completed all of our due diligence, or the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank has. We've completed a survey. We've done all the property research we needed to do. As Paul mentioned, the Copon Dam, we sort of realized during our due diligence the extent of the safety issues at that dam, and we completed a mitigation construction project to lower the water level in Coe Pond and in the canal, to reduce the risk of overtopping or failure. So that project has been completed, and right now, we are working with the current dam owner to finish that acquisition. So they're working with both towns on paying their tax obligations, and we're expecting this all be wrapped up by the end of the month. We're pretty confident that we will have possession of the dam by the 30th. Paul, you want to give a quick update on EPA?
During our last meeting, we had announced that we had just finished up the first round of sampling. That report is still available on NVCOG website. It has initiated discussions with DEEP, and will begin initiating an analysis by GEI. But basically, it's also turned us back around to EPA to conduct a second or follow-up round of sampling. So that is scheduled to happen this spring, potentially early summer. We're still discussing the results and what more information we need in order to better assess and characterize the sediment for figuring out how to mitigate. And as we've been talking about GEI, we did go through an engineering services procurement process back in July. We issued a combination of requests for qualifications and requests for proposals. We had a mandatory site walk on August 7th. We looked at both the Kinneytown and Ansonia sites, showed all the engineering firms as much of the sites as we could. We received 3 submissions from consultant teams. They provide us qualifications and a general project approach. From those submissions, we conducted 3 interviews, in-person interviews, all 3 teams. Of those interviews, we invited 2 of those teams to submit full proposals and received a scope of work with a detailed fee proposal. We did a very close cost comparison between the 2 teams, decided which one was the best value or the best sort of bang for the buck, and went into a negotiation with over the final scope and fee, and ended up choosing GEI and their partner Interfluve as 2 teams, 2 engineering firms that have a lot of experience in large construction projects and big restoration projects. So after that, that's been going through contracting and I'm told is going to be wrapping up, I think, this week, and they will be officially on board starting next week. But they're here tonight to add to some of this presentation. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Jim Nickerson from GEI. Thank you.
Well, we are very excited to be here. As Paul said, we're not quite under contract, so we haven't really gotten started. But I want to take a minute today to talk about, some of our background, so you can see some of the projects we've worked on and some of the issues we see with this project, and how we're going to move forward with it. So page down here. So real quick, my name is Jim Nickerson. I'm the project manager for the GEI team. We've got another a pretty broad group, and I'll show you a little bit more on the next slide too. Pretty senior staff that have done a lot of these types of projects, in the Northeast, the Midwest, and some other spots across the country. With me today is Kristen Connell. She's going to talk a little bit about permitting. She's our permitting lead, which is going to be a big part of how we can move this project forward. But we've got folks that are focused on really the dam removal, the restoration of the site afterwards, and really the management of the sediment, which is, we think, a big part of the project here. We're a firm of about 1,500 people nationwide. We've worked on about 200 between us and some of our partner firms that are on our team. Have worked on about 200 dam removal projects across the country. We do a lot of hydroelectric work and dam work across the country. We've worked on over 250 FERC regulated dams. So we have quite a bit of experience working through FERC's various processes and, rules, regulations, things like that they have. We have a couple of key partners. Interfluve works on dam removal projects up in the Northeast and also across the country. Their focus is largely going to be on the ecological issues, the fish restoration, and we also have MCA is a surveying firm. They'll provide a lot of the on-the-ground survey data for us, so we have good mapping of the sites. And then Stimson is a landscape architect, and their primary role in the project is going to be the trail and restoration, as we wrap the project up. These projects are complicated. They have a lot of different engineering science disciplines that need to be pulled in. So you can see from our team, there's lots of names and lots of different groupings of people. So part of my job will be to make sure we are following through with what the issues are, getting the right people focused on the technical components of it, and working hand in hand with NVCOG and Save the Sound. For a dam removal, we've got a lead for that, and underneath that there are civil designers, structural engineers, geotechnical engineers, hydraulic modelers, people that are focused on the sediment. How do we model how that's going to react in the various scenarios we're looking at, and then what are ways we can manage that sediment. For fish passage, there's a group of folks that will focus on that. Fish passage, the ecological impacts of the sediment in the river, what that does to the ecological environment. And then, some of the rare and threatened and endangered species, how the designs and the different options we're looking at would interact with those things. Like I mentioned, the restoration, that'll largely be led, ecological restoration by Interfluve, and what the stream channel looks like will be largely Interfluve working with us, and then the landscape and things up out of the water will be Stimson Associates. And then Kristen and a team working with Kristen will focus on permitting. We've worked on some pretty large dam removal projects across the country. Like I mentioned, a couple larger ones have been more recently in Michigan. On the Kalamazoo River, we're working towards a removal of a project that's on a Superfund site. So a lot of contaminated sediments that are part of that, managing those, making sure that we are integrating that. What happens to those sediments into the design? Are we having to dredge, in some cases, dredge those and dispose of those off-site? In other cases, when the sediment is lower and matches backgrounds, we can let that naturally aggregate down the stream channel. But that's a really detailed analysis of where those sediments are, how the design will interact with those, and we're going to follow a lot of those same procedures as we look at Kinneytown. The Boardman Dam Removal Project was another large one in Michigan. It was one of the largest dam removals in the state that was recently completed. We've done a few projects with Interfluve as a teaming partner, where our skills and their skills interact very well. One was a large one up in Maine. And then, like I mentioned, we worked on a number of FERC-related dams on this river system as we worked for Force Light Power a few different instances over the years. I'm going to let Kristen talk a little bit.
All right, I'm Kristen Connell. The key objectives of this project initially were establish fish passage, right? But that's not the only thing that's happening here. We're going to restore the river function so it can carry flood flows and act naturally and provide community access to the Naugatuck River, as well as remove this big safety risk, the Kinneytown hydroelectric project. So specifically, we're looking at targeted fish species, the American eel, river herring, sea lamprey, and American shad. So as we look to remove the dam and reconfigure the stream channel, we want to make sure that the flows that are passing through there are good flows for these fish species. We want to make sure that there's enough depth to the river. We want to make sure that there's resting pools, and just enough to pass them up to the next fish passage that was created relatively recently, right?
Changing.
This is just a slide to show a little bit of, how we would think about the sediment management. This slide shows, sediment levels over time. So really, ultimately, what we're going to do is look at the two parts of the sediment. What is in the sediment? How do we manage that? Is it material we can let pass? Do we need to take it somewhere else? What can we do with it? But then ultimately, as we look at different configurations of how we can remove the dam, that's going to change how water that comes down will want to move that sediment downstream. So a lot of what we're going to do, at least initially, is numerical modeling of different flood flows, different rain events and river levels that would come through, velocities, how that will move that sediment down. So we have a real good feeling for how that will interact with different types of configurations of breaches of the dam that we could integrate into the design. Ultimately, though, we want to get to a place where the stream channel goes back to what would be a more native stream channel with a defined stream bed, and then have an overflow section, where flood flows as we get to storm events. We've got some more floodplain, area to help attenuate some of those flood levels. Here's a kind of a before and after for the Boardman Dam project that we had done in Michigan. I mentioned the picture on the left is the before, the picture on the right is the after. Lower corner, you can see the dam. I use this thing here. I'm going to mess it up if I start pushing too many buttons. This logo was the original hydro electric dam. That once we removed it, we were able to create a stream channel and a floodplain that was kind of restored after the fact. I think this will look a little different in the Kinneytown area where we have, I suspect that the area downstream will look more like, or upstream will look more like what the area downstream looks like currently. It would just have a defined channel that goes back up to the Ting Dam.
So there's a lot of permitting that is involved in dam removals, if you don't already know, and it's gonna be a long timeline to get the permit applications processed. We need to not only address the FERC requirements, but that's kind of an end stage thing. Ahead of that, we need to go through discussions with Connecticut DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that they're comfortable with our design plans. So we've already, actually Save the Sound has already engaged with the Connecticut DEP, the US EPA, and the Army Corps of Engineers to discuss this project and what their concerns might be, so we can, hit the ground running and start the permitting process relatively early. My approach to that is like early and often. We want to talk to the regulators right the way along. We don't want to surprise them with anything. We want them to feel heard. We want you guys to feel heard, so that it's a relatively smooth project process. So we will prepare the permit applications that will be written after the design plans are created. And we'll have conversations with those regulatory bodies and address concerns in engineering or in ecological impacts or sediment management as we go along.
Just as Paul had mentioned, we're really just getting started. We haven't really even gotten under contract yet. We're getting, I think, ready, but our team is ready and excited to hit the ground running. First step really is to collect some more information. We're going to work with NBCOG and their relationship with EPA to help them put some input into where we would like to see more sediment sampling collected. We want to see a little bit more broad, I think, geography of what those samples are, help us figure out the thickness of sediment and the characteristics of that sediment. We also need to do a fair amount of surveying to get good base plans and mapping, so we have something to work with. And then we'll really start from there, developing some different hydraulic models, running some different scenarios, and looking at different alternative ways to safely remove the dam. Once we get to that process, we'll have a preferred alternative that we would then take through a design development. So that means, more formalized design calculations, assessments, developing construction drawings and specifications. And as Kristen mentioned, through that process, we get started a little bit, so we have something to share with the community and with regulatory agencies, and then we touch base with them as we go through the process. So we get to the end, they're fully informed, we're understanding their concerns, and we can integrate those into the design. So we get to the end and we get a project that's supported by the regulatory and the community. Schedule wise, that we think is going to take us through 2026. And then, we go into construction bidding, and then looking for construction to start in 2027, probably take us into 2028. I think that's the last slide we had. Going back to Aaron.
Yeah. So thank you guys. I appreciate you guys being here, and I think we'll be be in front of this group and the public a lot more, as we get underway with a lot more information, but, we're happy to answer any questions. I don't know if there's any questions online as well. I think we're gonna pass the mic around, right? Is that okay?
I had a question. I wanted to find out what is PERC's responsibility with this project? I mean, are we getting any compensation from them? I know I've met out on the site quite a few times over by Route 8 and was with the delegation from Washington that said that they were going to hold their feet to the fire. I don't know what exactly PERC's responsibility is going to be financially, if there's any.
I don't think there's any financial responsibility. Oh. So I think what the delegation was talking about at the time was FERC holding the dam owner responsible for what was going on at the site. They've been non-compliant for 6, 7, 8 years now at this point, even longer, have not been compliant with their license exemption. I don't, FERC oversees the project and permits it, but we're all going to be responsible for doing the work, and I don't think there's going to be any financial compensation for FERC, certainly.
So we're moving ahead on a project that we're 1.72 million short. Where's that money coming from?
So the question is $1.7 million short. How are we going to find the funding for the rest of the money needed for this project?
So we're moving ahead, but if you don't find the funding, what's the backup?
So we're a lot more than that short on this project. This is going to be a very expensive project. We still don't know what ultimately the design is gonna say, what this is gonna cost. So we are looking for funding from our federal partners, our state agencies as well. We're leaving no stone unturned looking for funding for this.
Okay, so let's say it's 2028 and there's still short money. Where's it coming from?
We'll continue looking for money until we can
You
afford
don't get it. I'm asking, what's your backup? You have a plan for everything else. Where's the backup?
We're asking for additional funding from NOAA for now, and then we're looking at CES options going into the future, but we're not going to embark on construction without having all the funding in place to finish construction. We wouldn't start
So
construction
that
without all
this
the
has to
funding.
be done because of the effects of it. So therefore, us taxpayers should be prepared to take a hit. Correct?
I just want you to put it into the mic so the people online can hear us.
So the question is, if this project can't get the funding and it has to be done because of the effects of this, are the taxpayers going to get hit with the funding? It's a yes or no, are we? Everybody looks at everybody, but nobody answers.
No, I'll be happy to answer the question. So what the question you're asking is about construction.
Rick.
No,
I have
at
to
the
go- I have
end
to
of the
stand there, Bill?
project, who's
Okay.
responsible for the money you don't get?
You're asking a question about construction costs.
No, the whole project, at the end, where does the money?
With due
come
respect,
from?
ma'am, you're asking about construction costs. We're
Okay,
funded for
whatever.
design. We'll get through the design. We'll have a cost estimate. We have to put the dollars together to complete the construction cost estimate. If we can't, we won't bid the project, and we won't bid the project until those dollars are in place. We have commitments from our federal partners and from our state partners. To your question about taxpayers, yes, federal taxpayers, which you all are, will pay for this project. And the reason federal taxpayers will pay for the project is because this is a federal energy project. You benefited from the generation of power here. We all benefited from the generation of power at this site. Americans across the country benefit from hydroelectric projects that are licensed by the FERC. When it comes time to remove it, yes, taxpayers pay for that. There's no, that's not a secret. And that's not, and it doesn't change anything about the way we approach this project.
May I add to that?
You're in trouble. You gotta,
You gotta be at this.
you come up here. Kevin, Zach.
Here's the problem with that question, from my perspective. You've got an owner that's in the state of Washington that doesn't give a damn about any of you or the quality of life in this valley. But they are actually affecting all your quality of life. This actually exists now. It was built originally in 1844. We're stuck with the legacy now. Yes, the taxpayers are going to fit the bill. They don't have money to mow the lawn anymore. So,
Neither do I, to
no,
be
well,
honest.
well, no,
Tell you the truth.
well, the point, my point is that it just sits there. It's not going to be done until it's funded. And regardless, it's always going to sit there until your grandchildren pay for it, or it falls down and kills somebody downriver, or does an uncontrolled polluted of Long Island Sound, or Ansonia, as the mayor was worried about. This is all about controlling your destiny and your children's and your great-grandchildren's children. It's there. You can't take it away. You can't just wish it away, I should say. So I understand it. I understand your question, and it's a good one. But the reality is, it is there, and it's not going to go away without our help. Or it will eventually. Gravity and water will take it away if you have that much time. And it's working on it right now, and it has been working. They never put any money into it. I got involved in this thing when Enel owned it. It was just a cash cow for them. They put nothing into it, and they just let it deteriorate. And now you have some polluted soil behind it, and in Coe Pond, that Coe Pond Dam, which I had walked on for many years and didn't realize the danger of it. I didn't see it as a dam. That was just caught just recently. And then the light bulb went off in my head. And if you look at a satellite view of it, you'll see it. It's a dam, and it's deteriorating, and it puts the railroad in jeopardy. But back to your point, I get it. Yes, we're all going to pay for it. And personally, I'm glad the federal government's paying for that, all that money that's going to San Francisco or LA or somewhere else. I'd rather it go to our backyard. That's my selfish point of view on that. I apologize for any of the problems I've caused by causing this money to come into this project, if I had anything to do with it. But that's as far as my apology will go. I'm glad it went here instead of to Delaware. So, that's from an outsider's point of view. I'm a very skeptical individual of large entities, like whether it's Northeast Utilities, United Illuminating, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That's why we hired a lawyer to watch this and give us the best advice to protect our interests. And so, but anyway, that's my long.
All right, any other questions? Okay.
I don't know, will you repeat them or should I walk up or?
Read them into the mic.
Hopefully folks online can hear me. The first question is from Gordon Land. What do you see happening to the Coe Pond ecosystem after the dam is removed?
Coe Pond is probably the reason why this project is controversial. If it weren't for Coe Pond, I think this would probably be a pretty slam dunk situation. But Coe Pond is a structure that's maintained. Its flow is directed by Kinneytown Dam. Without the Kinneytown Dam, you won't have flow going into that canal. You won't have flow going into Coe Pond, other than Colony Pond Brook that's coming in from upslope.
So the fate of Coe Pond is still very unlikely that it's going to remain at 25 feet of water. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like in the end, but it's going to change drastically. The potential outcomes are it could be a pond, but lower in water depth and a smaller in acreage, or it could become a stream wetland complex with that stream coming in from Colony Pond, or it might be a stream in a meadow type scenario. We also have sediment in Coe Pond that needs to be mitigated. It will likely need to be capped or cleaned or somehow managed because it can't be left there in its current state. So there's a lot that could potentially happen in Coe Pond, but it's not going to look like Coe Pond does today.
Thanks. Our second question is from John Warnock. It's a little long, so bear with me. Upstream industries dumped a multitude of compounds into the river for decades. There is no doubt there were toxic substances involved. Is any attempt to go after those that did the dumping in a similar way that the government went after GE for dumping toxins in the Housatonic and Hudson rivers? I thought that was the whole concept of brownfield redevelopment and remediation.
You want to answer? Ricardo? I think this is a case where, yes, and sort of as Rick said, this is something we all benefited from the industry upstream. And it is very difficult to go after industry and companies that did this sort of damage environmentally. I don't think there's any way to go after them. So
I could add to that too. I don't mean to cut you off, but go ahead.
So, I think the brownfields that do not really operate like that, we don't have the people that are responsible. These companies aren't even around anymore, most of them. So, we're sort of using federal and state funds now to remediate the site.
Yeah, I know it's very tempting to want to point fingers, find a culprit, and assign all costs or all blame to this. But really, this is decades and decades of accumulation. When that dumping occurred, it wasn't against the law. It was normal practice. Much of that industry folded. Those companies are long gone. They don't exist anymore to lay blame to. The example of GE, that's a more recent, those are more recent violations of existing laws. Clean Water Act didn't come into effect until the 60s. Much of that dumping happened well before that. So there really is there's no really viable way to assign blame for this contamination to any acting industry or company at this point.
Just a comment from Jim Turk that I'll. We have a comment from Jim Turk from one of our partners at the EPA. He notes that I'm sorry, NOAA, I apologize. The site conditions and level of contamination do not meet the level that falls under Superfund.
I have a question. In regards to Coe Pond, if the dam is removed and the level of water drops to where it was in the 1844 century, what's going to happen to the level of water flowing in Coe Pond, or is that going to cease completely from the Naugatuck River?
When Kinneytown is
the short answer is that Coe Pond would be a much shallower pond. Without the water coming into it from Kinneytown Dam and the canal system, it would not remain at that depth. But we have to deal with the spillway at Ansonia also, and that's a structure that's controlling the amount of depth of water in Coe Pond. elevation. We don't know how much lower it's going to be. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it won't be the depth of flow or depth of water you see today. Does that answer your question?
Most. So if the flow of water is reduced from Coal Pond, and you have only the drains from Seymour and Ansonia, and that's what's gonna feed Coal Pond, and the runoff from Colony Pond. Seems to me you're not gonna have a very adequate flow of water through there, and it's gonna be pretty stagnant. Especially during the summertime when there's not that much rain. You may have a lot of mosquitoes and stuff like that starting to brew down there. And to me, that's concerning. Because you're making a swamp where it wasn't that way before.
Yeah, I think you're heading in the right direction. It's not that we're going to leave it a stagnant mess, but it'll become a smaller pond in both an area and in depth. And whether it can remain a pond is still up to be determined. So yes, it's going to look very different. It's not going to have the same volume of water that's constantly moving through it and spilling over over the Ansonia spillway.
We've talked about the current owner of this dam. What about the former owners, Hydroland and then Enel, both of which are still active companies making money? Is there any desire to get funding from them as people who have, well, maybe they didn't make a lot of money on it, but they're out there?
Yeah, well, Rick might be able to answer that one.
So, the current owner is, an LLC that was spun off from Hydroland. So Hydroland is still at the table settling the matter and transferring the property. The current owner is obviously still at the table and dealing with it. Going back to Enel would be probably very difficult. They rid themselves of it. They sold the properties legally. And again, these are federal hydroelectric projects. It's important to note that in Connecticut, we've never removed a federal hydroelectric project. This is the first one in the state that'll ever have been removed. And the chain of liability for the owners is very shaky because they're given a license to operate or an exemption permit to operate and generate power in the public interest originally. So probably not an L, but the other two are still at the table. Thank you.
Are there any plans to remove the Ansonia #2 plant, or what are they gonna do with that?
Yeah, so that the dam at least is probably going to be removed, or at least the spillway will be removed. The structure itself may be historic, well, it's almost certainly historic, so we'll have to sort of deal with that. But the idea is to make that area a lot more available to the community around it, a lot less. Right now it's basically the lower canal was really was, speaking of a stagnant pool, was a stagnant pool. I've been there in the summer when it smells really bad. There's mosquitoes. It's not pleasant, and it's really really hurting that community. So part of what we're doing is really trying to restore that and make it more of an amenity to the community.
I have two questions. once this project is done, how will we have access to this to enjoy the river? You have the train tracks on one side, which is illegal to cross, and you have Route 8 on the other side. You have a sewer plant on the left there. I don't think they're gonna want people in that area, and then you've got the middle school, the old middle school, but there's not enough parking there. So how do you get access? Secondly, who's gonna maintain this once it's done? You're gonna get a lot of invasives coming down. It's known that these streams and rivers do push down invasive plants such as knotweed and so on. Who's gonna take care of that? You're gonna make a nice little meadow grassy area there, but that's not gonna last long. So who would be responsible? The town, the state, or you guys, or what?
Like the first half.
Okay.
So, you're right, access to the river is gonna be an issue, but, you know, we've already been in discussion with the DOT, who owns the rail. And, you know, once the dam is removed, there's two underpasses under the rail right now. There's one that carries the canal from Kinneytown Impoundment into the upper canal. And there's a bridge, at the outflow of Unit 2. We've talked to DOT. Those are both very old structures. DOT is very interested in you know, removing those structures and replacing them with something that, you know, is not, you know, 150 years old. And we've already been in discussions with them about allowing pedestrian access underneath those 2 points. So while it's completely illegal to cross the rail, over the rail, you know, allowing people and bicycles, or, you know, depending on how we restore the river and what amenities we, you know, decide are going to be included, you know, those two access points on the east side of the river at least will be available.
For parking, there's no parking on that side.
So right now there's not parking, but, you know, that's going to be part of the design as well. You know, that's something that we're going to all be looking at. And the river is going to be much narrower than it is now. So, you know, that will allow some access as well.
But it'll still be a floodplain, so.
Yep.
Yeah, right. I mean, the impoundment, Kinneytown Impoundment proper will become, you know, a renaturalized river corridor, just like upstream or downstream. There'll be some narrow floodplain benches on either side. I don't mean like man-made sitting benches. I mean lower lying areas close to the riverbanks that get flooded during flood events. And we will probably restore those with native plant array, but then it's not going to be a maintained landscape outside of what's part of the trail corridor.
There's no access up above the river, below the river, below the dam. At this point, there is no access to the river above the dam of the Naugatuck. Beyond, there's no access. There's no access below it. The Army Corps of Engineers just isolated the entire river from the community. They channelized it. I don't see a lot of fish going up in that channelized area from St. Michael's Church and the bridge up to this area. The water's only 6-8 inches deep there. How are fish going to swim through? That would need to be fixed too, wouldn't it, in order to get a good migration of fish?
Deep fisheries is established that that corridor through Ansonia is not a barrier to fish migration. It may be shallow at times. It has some riffles. It is straightened. It's not ideal habitat for fish, but it is not a barrier to their movement. So as we have photo documentation of fish pooling in schools at the base of Kinneytown, we know they're able to get up and down from the Housatonic. So we're not concerned about the inability of fish to make their way up to the site after the dam is removed. Again, it's not ideal habitat, but it's passable reaches. And then as far as the access points, you know, the trail design will take into account where it can connect into Seymour, where it can connect into Ansonia. And I agree that the Ansonia stretch is pretty much out of reach, but there is a trail system that runs parallel along the dike. We're not obviously creating a dike system up here, but there will be a trail system that somehow works around the rail system. along it as well. So how that's going to be configured still is to be determined, but as Aaron said, we're going to use the two bridges as 2 points of access to move trail, to provide pedestrian passage under or around, so that it can be accommodated either around the rail or in between the rail and the river, something like that.
This question is from Gordon Land. As a follow-up, a lot is being done to protect the fish. What about the bald eagles, deer, and other wildlife that have called Coe Pond home for 150 years?
Yeah, a lot of species I think are poised to benefit from this. What may not be understood is that the 5 species that we're trying to restore access to, river herring, which are 2, alewife and blueback herring, shad, lamprey, and eel, are all forage fish for a variety of birds of prey, including osprey and eagle. So we are expecting osprey and eagle to benefit immensely from the incoming restored fish run. This is what we observe in the Connecticut River, where there's bald eagles nesting every mile, and now even more frequently. This is what we see on the Thames Basin. So areas that have restored fish, migratory fish runs, have really good bird of prey property populations. They have healthier chicks. They lay more eggs. They produce more. So they're actually poised to benefit from this.
All set.
The dam, as we're looking at it, this photo, where would the whole dam be torn down? And where is the channel? Can you point out roughly where the channel of the river would be?
Slide here first. This is going to be a good slide for that or not. Some dam removal projects don't remove the entire extent of the dam. You might leave an abutment, you might leave a portion of the dam in place, maybe to protect infrastructure. I think that still has yet to be determined here. I think we're assuming most of the spillway will be removed, but for example, on the eastern shore, which is right up against the rail line, that might be a good location where the spillway is saw cut and the abutment is left in place to remain as a stabilizing feature for the rail line. That's just an example. These are things that need to be discussed in the engineering analysis. On the other side, the West Bank, there's the on-ramp to Route 8. That might be a good area where there's already a retaining wall there. That retaining wall might need to be stabilized, might need scour protection at the base. There's really deep water in that area. Where exactly the channel will reform and remeander in there is still sort of uncertain to us. But there is, looking at this image, the deeper water is on the left-hand side as you move up, and then it switches over. So there are shallow bars that are now more visible than they were before because water level is a little bit lower. So you can kind of see a single threaded channel moving through that impoundment. Where exactly it sizes up, is to be determined. But those are the things that we're going to be looking at as we move into the design phase.
Yeah, sure. Add a little bit to that. So one of the tasks we have is to do a bit of a geomorphic evaluation of the river so we can understand the best we can how it was naturally formed before. There's not a lot of historic photos from before the dam, so we're doing a little bit of sleuthing work to figure out where the deep channels. Ultimately, we'd like the channel to go back to where it was originally, if we could, because that's we don't really want to fight Mother Nature. If that's not possible, part of that has to do with, what Paul said, how do we make sure the surrounding infrastructure stays stable? And then how do we managing the sediment behind it? How much is going to come out? How much can stay? If we do different configurations, we may leave some of it behind and it's part of the design. So those are all pieces to be evaluated as part of the alternatives to come up with a plan.
I don't know if this has been discussed in the past, but is there any like contingency? Let's say this dam doesn't get its turnaround in 3 years. If the funding's not there or another natural flood hits it and delays the process, or it's just a lot harder to remove. Since we know fish are making it to the base of the dam, is there any contingency to maybe something like trap and truck to get them up? If the dam removal takes longer than anticipated?
That's really, that's really a question for deep fisheries. I doubt they would ever get to the point of trap and truck. I don't think that's being done for migratory fish in any active area right now. I know fish lifts have been proposed at certain active hydropower dams, but knowing that this is inactive and it's going to remain inactive, I don't think there's going to be an attempt to try to prop up the fish run when its removal is nearly certain. You know, it's a delay, but it's not necessarily a I don't think they're going to try to do anything just to deal with a delayed removal process, even if it takes years beyond what we've predicted.
And the state has, has called for the removal of the dam too.
Right, and you probably recall from the presentation that the state, knowing the status of this dam, has basically said the best way to restore the run is to remove the dam. So I don't think they don't have much appetite for trying to resurrect the run with sort of extraordinary measures like a truck and haul.
The deep at very best might have in the past conducted a rescue or two. Our group has rescued fish down there and we truck them up by bucket. It's difficult at best. I've been there in the middle of the night. That place is loaded with wildlife and all kinds of fish. Salmon, striped bass. I would say loaded with salmon. I've seen a couple of salmon down there. But the best that you could probably hope for is rescues, if that would ever be allowed, kind of like road when we do it. But, there's a lot of death down there. They get down there and that's what sparked my and my wife's advocacy for this. It was just what we saw, we just couldn't handle. It was the right thing to do, and we just had to do something about it. But that's a problem. By the way, I'd add one thing. It's not just fish. It's all kinds of wildlife. Whether it's deer, ducks, baby ducks that go over the dams. I have films of them going over and following their parents. They get trapped down there amongst that boulder field. That's just a killing field. This is an amazing. If you ever had to design a killing field for wildlife, this is what I would do. I don't think I'd alter anything other than keep it from the public.
Anyone else have a last question?
All right, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Again, we're gonna hold these every other month. So it's January now. We'll hold the next one in March. And we go back and forth between Seymour and Ansonia.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Can you let us know approximately when the team thinks there might be some design documents to be reviewed in public community meetings? How long is that? 6 months, a year, a year?
It would be collection of data this spring, probably early fall, alternatives through the summer. So probably preferred alternative, hopefully by mid to late summer, I think is our goal right now.
So sometime between spring and summer, we should be able to share something with the public in another community meeting.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so the question for those of you who didn't hear was, when we'll be able to provide some kind of actual documentation of how this is moving forward. And the response was hopefully sometime in spring or summer. So maybe at the next one in March. And May would be the one after that. So May we'll be back here at the senior center. March, we're gonna be in Seymour. Maybe at the community center, maybe somewhere else. So keep an eye on your emails for updates. If you have any questions before our next meeting, feel free to send them in to us. The team is very responsive. And thank you. Have a great night. Get home, stay warm.